It wasn't for some years.
Mr. Jimmy Page stating that magic does intrigue him.
A native to Hounslow,
he's not into the occult, but magic does intrigue him at the beginning. And then it turned into this.
With a quirky and exotic taste, Page was a peacock among pheasants. His circle was the most eccentric of the age of Aquarius. Finger-snapping, hash-smoking, LSD-dropping dandies. Page's circle, however, had a darker side. A side entrenched in mystical Eastern esotericism and
the dark side.
The occult. Jimmy Page's peacocking connected him with many of the legends of rock and roll, from Eric Clapton to the Rolling Stones.
I'd like to welcome everyone back to the Worldwide Paradigm Shift Show. Folks, enjoy the clip.
Page eventually founded Led Zeppelin, the experimental evolution of his former band.
And we're soon to take you,
Zeppelin, in his own words, came together
very far into who you are. So,
guitars. Then Robert Plant.
Thank you for being with me.
And finally, John Bonham, the drummer. An unholy quaternity.
This is The Curse of Led Zeppelin. Can be found on YouTube. You're going to miss about 10 minutes of this program.
At the time, sigils were little
known outside of esoteric 40-minute program. You're going to miss about 10 minutes.
Is a symbol used in magic, often the pictorial signature of a demon.
Thank you for joining me.
Today most frequently employed in chaos magic. They can be used for blessings, just as they can be used for curses. It's speculated that Page's foray into the occult may have had devastating consequences for him and for his bandmates. Over a curious sort of time, bad luck, accidents, sickness, and eventually several deaths would plague the band members and those close to them. This is known as the Curse of Led Zeppelin. For this investigation, we'll take a closer look at the historical facts surrounding these events. And with all due respect for the victims involved, explore the detailed speculations of longtime Zeppelin fans as well as occult researchers. Some say that Jimmy Page sold his soul, the soul of Robert Plant, and the soul of John Bonham to the devil. To understand the curse of Led Zeppelin in its full mystery, we must go back, long before the era of rock and roll, rewinding nearly 6 centuries to the infamous alchemist Johann Georg Faust. Welcome to Occult Mysteries. A pact with the devil, also known as a Faustian bargain, is a literary trope as old as time itself. Christian tradition tells that a contract with the devil is a transaction between Satan and a person. Satan delivers worldly goods, which the person exchanges for their soul. History abounds with tales of famed public figures said to have made pacts with the devil. The most famous of these tales is of Johann Georg Faust. The story of Faust begins with a dissatisfied scholar who has exhausted all means of human study. In exchange for infinite knowledge and a boundless hedonistic lifestyle, he trades his soul. The story opens with Faust alone in his study, preparing a ritual to conjure a spirit. "Therefore myself to magic I give," he says. When the devil, Mephistopheles, is summoned and agrees to serve Faust, the scholar implores, "How must I thy services repay?" To which Mephistopheles responds, "Undersignest merely with a drop of blood," which means, in no uncertain terms, with his soul. Faust accepts. Alas, the deal ends in tragedy. The story is said to have been based upon the real-life German alchemist Johann Georg Faust, who supposedly died in a laboratory explosion after the devil came to collect his soul personally. The devil, or Lucifer, which in Latin means the morning star, was created as the anointed cherub, the most powerful of God's angels. According to the book of Ezekiel, Lucifer had musical instruments built into his very being, stating that, quote, "The workmanship of your timbrels and pipes was prepared for you on the day you were created." And thus, Satan is thought to have been heaven's finest musician.
This would be the high vibrational conscious awareness, the frequency existing behind the skin of the melanated man
and many of you
into the melanated woman.
That deals with the devil are a common trope in nearly every musical genre.
Consider the fact that, as I've stated earlier, what you're calling real isn't real. We are floating in our own mind, in a matrix program. This matrix program is controlled, not only created by the radio frequency, the mind, the variances of the collective Tao, high and low vibrational frequency domain spectrum, but in the matrix program that we are presently in, these frequencies control, create, sustain, and destroy all temporal supports that begin and end for us,
3 years prior.
immortal, magnetically converting creators.
Often speculated that Stairway to Heaven,
Remember the two electromagnetic soul supports that
of all time was a product of the devil.
Assist you in your conversion.
That the song played backwards is an audible ode.
As your mind
Robert Plant once
extrapolates your external chemical experiences, activating your karma as a result of the application of your light or dark side.
2 centuries to the genre of music.
And also consider the light and dark electromagnetic tracks that exist when you leave your body before you
Johnson, who would be a significant influence on
prior to reincarnating once again into your pre-programmed bloodline.
Born around the turn of the 20th century.
That is, if your bloodline sticks together.
Known not for his music.
Sorry for the interruption. I love you, folks.
Johnson is said to have approached the Crossroads late on an October's evening, while the moon was full, and sold his soul to the devil, who came to him in the form of a large black man. The devil took Johnson's guitar and tuned it, completing the deal.
Did you hear that, folks?
Crossroads has long been associated with the paranormal.
The devil came to him in the form of a large black man. Now, before any other bloodline came out of our genetics, ladies and gentlemen, it was only the melanated races who were living and dying.
As far as the Anansi people of West Africa.
Living and aligning themselves with a culture and a tradition and then dying. There was a light and a black track that existed for them in this matrix program.
Stories of the Crossroads.
So the energy that exists here in this matrix program, the progenitor of that negative low vibrational track, of course, although we are unseen, the progenitor of this, the creator, is the progenitor. The progenitor of this electromagnetic track, this lower vibrational one, exists behind my and my brother and sister's melanated skin. And this is why magnetically in this matrix program, when it comes to us collectively seeking to find ourselves in disorder, by the way, attempting to align and customize our awareness with the physical world. What happens is, with the chemical, lowest division of our trinity, what you call the physical world, nothing works out for us. And karma is even worse than it would be for any other bloodline.
Specifically Haitian voodoo, the guardian of the Crossroads is Papa Legba. Legba serves as a gateway between the physical and spiritual worlds, providing a way for both to communicate with one another. Papa Legba is thought of as a trickster, but not a particularly evil or malevolent one, differing considerably from the Faustian concept of the Crossroads devil. If we interpret the story of Robert Johnson through the lens
Crossroads
of
devil.
Folklore,
now consider the Ark of the Covenant. The Crossroads that he just mentioned was the dissension of our seventh sensory frequency to
the Crossroads to sell his soul,
a five sensory aware conscious collective magnetically converting through the Matrix program.
Might not translate to those who may have recreated his legendary actions with the wrong idea and intention. It may not be Papa Legba that they summon. Whatever Johnson did on that fateful night, he lived and died a legend and inspired countless musicians after
Papa Legba,
the members of Led Zeppelin,
was on the high vibrational track.
Two of the band's songs were directly influenced by
the individual entity, the dark,
specifically the Lemon song,
conscious awareness. It's totally unconscious and needs physical definition. That's where the possession experiences come from. This individual exists on the totally lowest vibrational track. And there are nothing but low vibrational, magnetically misaligned, seven sensory aware beings sustaining that track. And they have the same frequency as us, the melanated men and women. Now that doesn't mean all of us are bad. Some of us are vibrating just like Papa Legba. High vibration.
Who drew great inspiration from the blues
on those on these scene tracks.
That Muddy Waters was the first
on this scene chemical track.
And that Waters'
frequency
performance blew him away. His rock and roll
now the reason why I'm talking through this also is because I want you to task your mind through this clip, and then I want you to go watch this by yourself. But I want you to attempt to hear my words over what you're seeing and hearing on TV, and then force yourself to hear what you're hearing on TV over my words.
In 1998,
and then go watch it by yourself. Now I'm going to shut up from here on out until I believe it's necessary for me to assist in guidance.
For as long as the blues have been the blues.
The supernatural has been with the blues as long as the blues have been the blues.
It is no surprise then that impressionable young British men, inspired by the great bluesmen of their generation, would also become interested in the supernatural. The birthplace of the blues is commonly thought to be Mississippi. To this day, you'll find large African American communities there who still hold their African roots close to their chests. It is from
African American brothers and sisters and melanated people of the earth, you carry a high vibrational magnetic potential. Your mind controls the matrix. When you come out of your body, you literally are the dark side that any human being on the planet would supernaturally influence. You are that power. You exist in your body and you exist in this electromagnetic track.
And embracing freedom.
And your soul within your chest, your soul supports, they run throughout your ferromagnetic bloodstream. They radiate a magnetic field that connects to that lower vibrational track.
Christianity that pervaded all sectors of British society. While the blues profoundly influenced Page and his generation.
You're suffering right now, and you don't have to be anymore.
Were other sources of inspiration.
The crossroads that you've crossed over are now
is a controversial figure, to say
they're coming to an end, and it is now time for your redemption.
Many claim Crowley was a Satanist, though that suggests little understanding of the occult.
Please take my guidance.
Crowley was a magician, but not a devil worshipper, at least in the conventional sense. However, Crowley's magic was far from the play magic of David Blaine. His interests were not in illusions, but in unlocking dimensions, conversing with angels, and summoning demons.
You have an interdimensional, multi-conscious, transgenerational identity and existence.
Towards the turn of the 20th century. The society was a secret one, akin to the Freemasons.
That's a bright blue eye you're looking at.
To secret magical Egyptian knowledge. The Golden Dawn's intentions were not evil. In fact, the society wanted humanity to rise to higher levels of consciousness and awareness. They wanted the world to wake up.
This is the light side of our European Brotherhood they're speaking of.
Another was Sir Arthur Conan Doyle,
the light side of our European brotherhood
Crowley was supposedly
and sisterhood
for tearing the group apart through bitter infighting. Many of the Golden Dawn's leadership considered Crowley's form of magic to be self-centered and selfish.
And that would be
later embrace with his "Do what thou wilt"
the dark side
credo.
they're speaking of now,
After
Mr.
the
Crowley.
Golden Dawn split, Crowley founded his own secret society, Ordo Templi Orientis, also known as OTO. The organization's religious headquarters was in Cefalu, Sicily. Crowley's life was spent in orgies.
Both of them have
of copious
a low vibrational
regardless
radio frequency to which they vibrate on. It is an animal's
and allure his followers
level of vibration.
In fact,
the level of conscious awareness and the frequency that our melanated bloodline released into the Matrix program as counterbalancing conscious control.
It was his cruelty that
who has control of your mind? Who has control of your minds?
He died in a boarding house in Hastings, England. His last words, according to a friend, were, "Sometimes I hate myself." It was not Crowley's life that was particularly remarkable to the teenagers of the 1960s, with whom he became an icon, but rather his "Do what thou wilt" credo. Musicians, beatniks, and rebels began to live according to this phrase. Ultimately, what Aleister Crowley and his teaching stood for was a rejection of society, self-gratification, and the pursuing of one's desires, however depraved and however abstract.
And ladies and gentlemen, our present system is totally self-absorbed and
courageous, and were finally able to enjoy themselves through
aligned with this level of conscious awareness.
So the occult was fashionable, most certainly. But with all types of fashion,
and you and I continue to feel it
much more seriously than others.
With our ignorance in unconsciousness
in a way to almost worship Crowley
and delusion here in the
Matrix. His
Matrix.
organization, OTO, where he has remained a member for nearly 50 years. Crowley's particular brand of magic was inspired by a spirit named Aiwass, who he channeled through his wife while in Cairo. Thus, the magic he promoted was supposedly of the ancient Egyptians, which we can see from his religious texts and writings, as they are abound with references to a mythic, secret form of Egyptian magic. This, too, was something embraced by Jimmy Page. In the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, one of Page's stage outfits is
prior to the melanated races existing.
The Eye of Horus, enveloped in a pyramid.
The Eye of Horus.
What is, for one person, a passing breeze, is for another a tornado that consumes every part of them. For Jimmy Page, it appears that he was of the latter persuasion.
That would be
his life has been shrouded in mystery.
The effect of those who are light and dark,
and undoubtedly one of the greatest
depending upon the radio frequency conscious control that controls the society, whether it be 5 sensory aware or 7 sensory aware, worldwide control.
Patricia Page in West London on the 9th of January, 1944. His father was a personnel manager at a plastic coating plant. His mother was a doctor's secretary. In 1952, Page's family moved to Epsom, Surrey, which is where Page first developed a love for music. His first guitar was a Spanish one, and he found it mysteriously in a cupboard in his home, as if by magic. He would later say, "I don't know whether the guitar was left behind by the people in the house before us, or whether it was a friend of the family's. Nobody seemed to know why he was there." Jimmy Page, to his credit, was largely self-taught. He attended very few guitar classes and mastered the instrument on his own. In 1957, he appeared on BBC One with a guitar he had bought with his savings. His first electric guitar he bought secondhand. From an early age, Page was a fan of the blues, citing Elmore James, B.B. King, Otis Rush, Freddie King, and Muddy Waters as his inspirations. Page's interest in the occult also began young. As a schoolboy of 15, he read Aleister Crowley's Magic in Theory and Practice. After coming across the book, he would later be quoted as saying, "Yes, that's it. My thing. I've found it." By the mid-1960s, Page had become
the lower vibrational unseen track.
He surrounded himself with groupies,
the dark side,
pot-smoking dropouts.
The dark track.
The sex, drugs, and rock and roll, however, were not enough for the young
in synchronicity with his inner lower vibrational soul support.
Jimmy founded a new quartet, Led Zeppelin. Zeppelin was quickly signed to
his dark side
Records and managed by Peter Grant, who previously managed Chuck Berry and the Animals. Within a year, the band had gathered a cult-like following among rock fans in the United Kingdom, Europe, and United States. Fans immediately began to notice Page's fascination with the occult. In the few interviews he gave, he made frequent reference to the occult and his study of it. He once told a journalist that, "You cannot ignore evil if you study the supernatural as I do. I have many books on the subject, and I've also attended a number of seances. I want to go on studying it." And go on he did. Page is thought to have asked his bandmates, Robert Plant, John Bonham, and John Paul Jones, to perform a ritual with him that would cement Led Zeppelin's name in rock and roll history and set them up for life. The ritual, however, could not be spoken of. It would redefine their futures and that of Led Zeppelin. Among occultists, this type of magic is not taken lightly. It involves the conjuring of ancient spirits, the gods of men. These rituals, which would have been all too familiar to Aleister Crowley, should only be performed by experienced occultists and wizards, not half-stoned musicians, one practitioner would later claim. It is commonly thought that out of the quartet, the only member to refuse to participate in the ritual was John Paul Jones.
The gods of men.
The trouble started for Led Zeppelin soon after their rise to popularity.
Born out of the
alleged ritual. First, Robert Plant was nearly killed in a serious car accident.
Men that
then,
wanted
just
to
2 weeks later, his Aston Martin
make a love with
him and crushed him, breaking him.
The wives of
Perhaps
mankind.
This was an omen of the greater harm that was still to come. Perhaps the half-stoned rockers of Led Zeppelin were not as great magicians as they thought they were.
That you read about in the Bible.
Almost immediately, Led Zeppelin's fan base began to swell to become an indomitable and unforgettable rock force still adored by millions to this day. And as Led Zeppelin's fame grew, so too did Jimmy Page's wealth and freedom to practice the occult without restraint.
Millions of individuals vibrating with the same frequency.
Page purchased Buleskin House on the shores of Loch Ness. It was the former home of his idol, Aleister Crowley,
the dark
side, supposed location of a ritual said to have torn the fabric of our universe and allowed evil unlike any other to enter into it.
Brought in by millions and millions of individuals,
had translated the medieval occultist grimoire,
vibrating with a dark side.
Merlin the Mage. His translation, albeit a poor one, was used by Crowley to perform a ritual to summon the 12 kings.
Naturally, they vibrate light, high vibration.
Now, Crowley's
they are the center of the sun, vibrating dark, vibrating low.
At Buleskin House,
Immortals. Immortals, vibrating low.
Daughter and 1-year-old son
on the dark side, in the dark magnetic path.
Crowley abandoned the property. He would later claim
not
that
immortals on the light.
A Buleskin House turned by the evil he saw there and attempted to murder his entire family. To this day, locals claim that evil spirits walk the grounds of Buleskin House, and it's easy to see why they might. In 1965, the new owner of the property, an Army major, took his own life with a shotgun. Friends of Jimmy Page and visitors to Buleskin House would claim that at dusk, as the sun disappeared, that the patio and gardens would become awash with shadows, phantoms, and specters, the residue of a century of ritual magic.
The fail-safe protocol bloodlines are specters in the Matrix program.